Hey, welcome back to Everyday Economics. This is the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug. I'm the CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics, a production of America's Talking Network. You can subscribe to all of our podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics, please make a tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We're recording this episode on Thursday, December 26, 2024. And joining me as always, my friend and colleague, Dr. Orphe Divounguy. He's a PhD economist. He's also a world traveler who was up in Vancouver, British Columbia with his beautiful family, enjoying a nice break from work. Did you get up to Whistler? Did you get to put the skis on there, son?
No, I mean, the weather's been terrible here, sadly.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I mean, can't see anything out there.
Not cooperating. It's a foggy day here in suburban Chicago, and I had no plans on skiing because, of course, everything here is flat. Hey, let's talk about 2024. It's that time of the year, right? I mean, it's an opportunity to look back. There were a lot of things that shaped this year. Anything stick out? I mean, in your mind? I mean, certainly, we had elections, right? I mean, we had policy changes along the way. We've got multiple wars going on in the world, or military activity, right? And the labor market here at home, very interesting, right? I mean, we had record low unemployment at one point. We've had jobs reports that have suggested at different times that we were adding jobs to the economy. Of course, we've had significant revisions to the job reports, over the course of the year. Why don't we start with the labor market, since that's a home issue and it affects, I think, the most Americans. What are your biggest takeaways from the labor market from this year?
Well, look, it's cooled. It's cooled substantially. The number of job openings in 2024 fell from 8.9 million, roughly 9 million jobs, to about 7.7 million jobs. So we, a little bit 1.2 fewer job openings, 1.2 million fewer job openings out there. So it's a labor market that's cooling. The number of, so relative to the unemployed, we went from the number of people that were unemployed, we went from about 1.3. So we're looking at 36% more job openings than they were unemployed workers, to just about 10% more, right? So there's still more open jobs out there. Of course, it takes a long time for these jobs to get filled because, right, like, even though you have jobs, you may not have the right workers to fill those jobs, those vacancies. And so that's cooled down a lot, right? So the people who are unemployed today are taking a long time, are basically struggling to find employment, when compared to just, at the start of the year, where there were more abundance of vacancies out there. And so depending on what industry you're in, right, it really depends on what industry you're in. In some industries like healthcare, or even in the government sector, it's still a lot easier to find work. And then when you go to other industries, by the way, construction sector is also a good one, right? That's been where, there's been labor shortages, and that, if you're in that field, it's a lot easier to find work, and it's also easier to see your pay increase faster. But then you have sectors where things are a little bit tougher, like the professionals, right? Professionals and office type jobs are very difficult. Manufacturing even harder, right? If you're out there looking for work, it's a little tough out there. When compared to January of 2024 or a year ago.
Right. Now, let me ask you this. I mean, I think this was a matter of much debate in the past year. And maybe this is a carryover issue from 2023. There were a tremendous amount of job listings out there. in terms of the number of people who converted on those jobs opportunities, public sentiment seems to be that they were maybe in some cases phantom jobs. Did people get placed? I mean, did the in particular in the higher paying tech sector, was that an exercise in seeing who's out there and interested in moving, or were there actually positions that were filled?
No, I think positions. Look, all you have to do is look at wage growth, and to tell you how badly employers want to hire workers.
Yeah,
When you if you're really desperate for workers, what do you do? Well, you up the ante, you raise wages, right? You posted wages, and wage growth is still pretty strong, cooled from 4.4% on average year over year, increasing on a year over year basis in January to 4% in November. So not a big cool down when it comes to wage increases, right? The bulk of these wage increases come from job to job movements. So employers will probably more likely to poach rather than go to the pool of unemployed workers. And these job to job movements are helping to support wage growth, right? Now, remember, the number of quits has fallen tremendously in the past year as well, and so and that's also partly why wage growth remains. People are basically saying, "Hey, look, if I can't find work necessarily, I'd rather just stay on the job. I might just stay on the job." Remember, when for you to quit your job, you got to get an offer that's above and beyond what you're currently getting paid, right?
right.
So the number of quits has fallen tremendously from about 3.2 million quits in January to just 3.1 million quits at the end of the year. At the end of the year, remember back in April 2022, we were at 4.3 million people quitting their jobs
Right.
on a monthly basis, right? So
That's right.
that was crazy, right? That great resignation. Well, the great resignation gave way to the great stay. People are no longer quitting because the number of job openings has dwindled. The number of opportunities, the opportunity set has shrunk. That's the labor market. Of course, the inflation picture this year, also, we've seen a decline, right? Easing inflation. But it seems to have stalled, right? The easing on the inflation front really has stalled. I'm not seeing a ton of progress on the inflation front towards the end of this year. We saw a bigger labor market cool down this year than we saw inflation declining further. Um, and I think the Fed is starting to accept that, right? By saying in their summary of economic projections that they're willing to tolerate 2.5% inflation and 2.8% core inflation in 2025, they're basically hinting that they're okay with that so long as the labor market doesn't deteriorate uh, and cool down further.
Yeah. Well, it was an interesting year. There's a lot of everything. We kind of locked in on what was going on in the labor market, and I think, frankly, for most Americans, that's what matters above all else. I
We
appreciate
just
your thoughts.
I got to say, maybe an area of concern here is you're starting to see some businesses that, with interest rates staying higher for longer, you're starting to see some businesses really saying, "Hey, we thought we would be able to refinance those really pricey loans,
Oh yeah,
and
not so
now
much right now.
it's not happening fast enough, and so delinquency rates are on the rise. For some businesses, right, that were slightly over leveraged, and so that is an area of concern going into 2025. And so I would look out for that.
Yeah. Well, oh, I appreciate your thoughts as always. For Dr. Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics and dozens of other high quality podcasts at americastalking.com.